Welcome to Buried Evidence, a true crime podcast. I'm your host, Katie. This episode contains graphic descriptions of violence, including sexual assault, murder, and cruelty to animals. Listener discretion is advised. This is part 2 in the story of serial killer Israel Keyes. In part 1, we learned about the details of the abduction of Samantha Koenig and how investigators tracked down their suspect after a break in the case led them to a man named Israel Keyes. Keyes made several ATM withdrawals using a stolen debit card while traveling east through Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas. Keyes was arrested in Texas and transported back to Anchorage, where he confessed to killing Samantha and disposing of her body. Part 2, the confession. In Keyes' initial interview with detectives, he seems a bit cagey and refuses to provide any details about exactly how he killed Samantha. He takes long pauses before answering their questions and only gives them exactly what he knows they'll find out through the natural course of their investigation. A theme begins to emerge where Keyes will dangle fragments of information in front of investigators, and just when they think they have him, he stops short of providing them with answers and makes demands before he'll provide any further details. He lays out ground rules for detectives who are forced to give in to his demands. He doesn't want Kimberly's house torn apart or his name splashed across the media in association with his crimes. Keyes uses this opportunity to take whatever sliver of control he has left to create the perfect conditions to fulfill his twisted fantasy of how and who he will make his confession to. This is part of the fun for him. Keyes wants one of the female detectives present before he's willing to tell them how he murdered Samantha and what the details of her final hours were.
Where was Samantha when you left the cabin?
She was in the shed.
Was she alive?
Yeah, I might save that story for later.
Well,
She's not alive now, so it doesn't really
no,
matter.
I understand that, but it'd be good for us to know now whether she was alive or not.
Why?
Well, let me show you this that you saw this morning. Tell me if you don't want to see it.
Ooh.
This is a photo, and we know the date of the newspaper.
Right?
Is she alive in this photo? Was she alive when you got back from your trip to down on your cruise and you got back on the morning of the 18th?
Nope. That would seem like an obvious question.
So she was alive.
Huh?
She was alive.
When I left? No.
Okay, what did you do to her?
I don't know. I might not. I'll tell that whole story, but I might not tell it right now.
Is there a reason you don't want to tell it now?
Yeah.
Can you tell us what that is?
I already know who I want to tell that story to.
Who's that?
What's her name? Mickey? The lead detective?
Why do you specifically want to tell her?
Because the way I am.
Well, you told us that she was dead when you left the trip, right?
There's more to the story, but I'm not gonna. I don't
we're-
think I'm gonna tell it right now.
That's fine. We understand you're not going to tell us everything, but the one thing I do need to know before I leave here today is how you killed her.
Why?
Well, that's what we agreed when we came back, right?
No. I mean, it doesn't really matter how it happened. I'm saying that, yes, I was responsible, and yes, I told you where she is.
So you were responsible for what? You need to tell me.
For her being deceased at this moment, yes.
So you killed her.
Yes.
So you want to tell Mickey, Detective Dahl?
I'll tell her the rest of the details.
In other words,
If you wanna know all of them,
in other words, what you did to her besides killing her, or just killing her?
I'll tell everything you wanna know. I'll give it blow by blow if you want.
Well, can you give us a little idea of what it is you want to tell her about?
Why? No?
A few days later, after arrangements are made for the female detective to be in the room for the confession, Keyes meets with detectives once again to, using his words, provide a blow-by-blow account of how he killed Samantha. I'm going to play you some of that interview, but I'm compelled to give a strong warning here. The details are extremely graphic and difficult to listen to. Keyes doesn't hold anything back in this interview, and many of the details are very disturbing.
Shelf above her head. It's just like a small shelf that was supported by a closet shelf support, 12 inches wide, with the hook for the closet rod in the front. And like I say, on the floor there was a tarp and a foam mat and a sleeping, well, not a sleeping bag really, but like a fleece sleeping bag of sorts.
Did you put the tarp down and catch any blood?
No, just to keep anything from her transferring to the shed.
Where did you put the foam mat and
That stuff was all put down ahead of time, probably a day or two before.
in anticipation of burning someone else?
I was thinking about it. I didn't have a specific plan in mind.
I may have missed this on the first, but did you have a specific person in mind? Did you know?
No, I had that location in mind just because of where it was and the fact that they were open late and the fact that I had staked out maybe, I don't remember how long before, a couple days it seems like. I walked by and it looked like there was only one person working there and there weren't a lot of cars around, so it was in the back of my mind. I didn't really know for sure that I was going to do anything. I thought maybe I might just rob that place.
Why did you
No.
Why did you park at the Home Depot parking lot instead of in the neighborhood back behind the coffee shop in the darker? And it,
I don't know. Good question. I guess I didn't think the video cameras were that good. I remember seeing the IHOP camera, and I remember thinking that thing looks like it's 20 years old. It probably doesn't even record anymore. But I wasn't really worried about the video because I had my face covered the whole time, and I think I had the front license plate off my truck removed, and the back license plate is almost always covered with snow. The truck didn't look anything like it normally does, and
well, I tell you, there's 725 Chevy trucks that are very similar, kind of looking like yours.
it's the most common truck in Anchorage, so the windshield repair. Anyway, so yeah, that's I did think about parking back in the neighborhoods, but there was so much snow, there wasn't a lot of places to park, and I was worried. I was more worried about having someone hit my truck and having it turn into a big thing or getting a traffic ticket or whatever. So, and there were other places around town that I was looking at too.
Where else?
I was looking at Huffman area because that was, there's several coffee stands along that road. They stay open late too. There's not very many people around, and there was several public areas where I could have parked. So I was looking at that area too. But honestly, it was kind of like a spur of the moment thing the way it happened. When I robbed her, she was, very cooperative, and I don't know, I just even, I guess you could say against my judgment, I just kept going with it, even though I had already told myself that if whoever was there didn't have a car, then I wasn't gonna do anything more than rob them and tie them up. And but there was something about her, like the way she reacted, that kind of made me want to just keep going with it. And plus, like I said, I had my police scanner in my ear, and it seems like there was something going on the east side, so I knew most of the police would be over there, and I thought I was just on a real adrenaline rush. I thought I could just walk her right down the street. Nobody, and I had never done anything that brazen before, and I thought it was just a really real adrenaline rush, and was determined at that point that it was going to happen, regardless of what I had to do.
Keyes had a very specific way of doing things. He planned his murders down to the smallest detail and had never taken anyone in his own town before. Keyes always followed a strict set of rules that included abducting people in their own cars and timing his crimes to coincide with planned travel. Keyes would rent a car and drive for hundreds, sometimes thousands of miles, so he couldn't be tied to the area. The fact that Keyes was willing to abandon this code of conduct is more evidence of how he was beginning to lose control of his impulses. Samantha had been cooperative with Keyes at the coffee shop. She complied with his demands for the cash in the register and went willingly with him as they walked across the parking lot to his truck. But just as they got to the road, Samantha saw an opening and tried to get away.
Did she try to get away or fall on the ground, or she did?
She tried to get away on Tudor. We were only about 100 feet from the coffee stand, maybe 200 feet.
Weren't you carrying a purse too?
Yep.
How were you holding the purse and the gun?
I picked up that camera as we were leaving and made some comment that it was my lucky day, and had the purse and the camera by the straps in one hand, and had my arm around her with the other. Had my other arm around her, my right arm, and I had the gun in my right hand, but I didn't have it ready to fire. I just had it. I was holding it around the cylinder and the trigger guard, but I had the barrel up, so she would think I had it ready to fire. And I just told her to act like she was my girlfriend and just act like maybe she was a little bit drunk or something, and I was helping her. And after that first time she tried to get away, I tackled her. After that, she knew I was serious, and after that, she didn't give me any problems.
So the whole entire time after that, she was compliant, she was cooperative, and she kind of like knew you meant business.
Yeah.
After Samantha's failed attempt to escape, she was forced into his truck. They drove around for a while, and Keyes told Samantha about the plan for the ransom money. Samantha told Keyes her family didn't have any money, but he wasn't deterred by this, as he was confident that her family would be able to come up with the money. However, this is when Keyes realized that his plan had a few complications. When they left Common Grounds Coffee, they had left Samantha's purse sitting on the counter, which contained her cell phone and her keys to her truck. Her debit card, which Keyes needed to access the ransom money, was in her truck at her house. Keyes realized he would need to run a few errands before he could carry out the rest of his twisted plan that night.
I mean, what was the plan from there? I mean, you got this chick, you got her away, now you're in Glen Eyrie Park, and you're kind of home free, right? I mean, you're kind of, you got her out of the bright light.
I wasn't in any hurry. I talked to her quite a bit. I was asking her about her debit card, where it was, her cell phone. She kept telling me her cell phone didn't work, and, found out that all the stuff was in other places. None of it was in her purse, not even her keys. She'd left her keys in the coffee stand. Or I left her keys. I thought I had grabbed everything and thrown it in her purse, but her cell phone and her keys were on a different counter, and I didn't see them. I think I had a headlamp on.
How did you know to put the dowel in the window? Is it just sitting there in plain view? I mean, that was pretty... You put the dowel in the window of the office.
Well, my whole intention was to make it look like it had closed, the shop had closed somewhat normally. And the dowels were, I don't remember where they were. I think they were fairly obvious. They were there somewhere.
In plain view somewhere.
Yeah.
So you could see.
Yeah.
So, as you were talking to her, you're asking her about the debit card. You're asking her about her cell phone. I mean, what was the plan with those items specifically? I mean, you wanted her cell phone for what?
The plan was exactly what I did. I needed her cell phone to send. At first, I was going to get a prepaid cell, untraceable, or I've heard they're untraceable. I've never had one. I don't know if they are or not, but at first I was thinking I didn't want to go back to the coffee stand because she kept saying the alarm was armed now that the door was closed, and I didn't want to break the window to get back in because that would have defeated the whole purpose. So I was going to get a prepaid cell to send the texts, but then I realized that wouldn't be very believable since it wasn't coming from her cell. And that's when I made up my mind to go back to the stand. I figured even if the alarm went off, I would hear it on my scanner and I would be gone before anybody showed up. And then when I got there, she told me that she was bluffing me about the alarm and that it wouldn't go off, but that I didn't really believe her at that point. I thought I just was my plan was to go in and out really quick and get her phone. Yeah, so as soon as I got her phone, I started sending text messages and...
But that was another question I had. Why did you respond to the text messages? One from her boss and one from her boyfriend?
To make it seem more believable.
Like she was okay and she was, she was mad.
It's just that she was, had a bad day and was pissed off at everybody. Plus, I figured from her age, that wouldn't be that unusual, or certainly wouldn't be something the police would be interested in hearing about. So I figured even if they were upset about it or out of character, there wasn't anything that was going to be done by much of anybody, at least not for a couple days.
And you were right. That both of the texts were kind of fell right in line with, it was appropriate communication.
After debating getting a burner phone from Walmart, Keyes decided it was less risk and more believable if the text messages he planned to send came from her phone. So he drove back to the Common Grounds Coffee and retrieved Samantha's purse and cell phone. He immediately started sending text messages from her phone and staked out an ATM to go to later. After a few hours of driving around, they eventually headed back to Keyes' house, where he had prepared his shed days earlier by laying out a 9x12 tarp on the floor, covered by a foam mat. He forced Samantha to sit on a 5-gallon bucket and tied a piece of rope around her neck that was screwed to the wall so she couldn't move. He turned up the music in the shed in an effort to drown out the sounds of her screams. At this point, though, Keyes had managed to keep Samantha calm by giving her the impression that once he got the ransom money, he would return her to her family. At this point, he still needed to get her debit card from her truck and go to the ATM he staked out earlier to make sure the PIN worked. He left Samantha in the shed and told her he'd be listening to a police scanner. So if there were any calls to the neighborhood, he'd be back before the cops could get there.
Pretty much sent all the texts and staked out an ATM to go to later.
When you asked her about the ATM card, where the ATM card was, and she gave you her address, right? I heard that.
Yeah.
Okay. When you were actually in the truck and you took the ATM card, where did you find the wallet?
It was in the visor, right
The
where she
wallet
said
was
it would be
okay.
there. She said it would be there.
The wallet was as well.
Yeah, the whole wallet. I think she gave me several places where it would probably be. I think she said glove box, driver's side door, compartment, or the visor. And I think it was all in the visor.
Why didn't you take her debit card, her ATM card?
She only told me about the one. She said it was a shared account, and that was the only one they had.
Okay. And when the guy came out and kind of, confronted you, or
Yeah, he came out and said, "Can I help you?"
what did you say?
I just stood there and looked at him to wait to see what he was going to do. I didn't have my gun on me.
But you
I had my knife, and I was waiting for him to see if he would, run to me or something. Or, trying. He seemed like he was uncertain of what to do, and then he just turned and ran into the house. And I figured he was going to call the police. So I figured I had a couple minutes, so I just ran to the car and got out of there before he could come back out.
Yes. And from there you went back to your shed. Well, you went to the ATM.
No, I was going to go to the ATM, but then I realized I hadn't written down the PIN number she gave me, and I couldn't remember what she had said, so I had to go back to the house and get it from her again.
And why did you check the balance of the ATM? Were you just making sure the PIN worked?
Yeah.
She wasn't lying?
Well, and to see if there's money on it, but I believed her. I just wanted to
Double check.
make sure it had an active checking account and all that.
After Keys returned to the shed, Samantha asked him if everything was working out with the debit card and if he'd gotten a hold of her dad. At this point, Samantha still believed that Keys' motivation had everything to do with the ransom money, but it was beginning to be apparent that Keys had ulterior motives. It was in this terrifying moment that Samantha began to realize the true danger she was in. Keys poured himself a glass of wine and prepared to carry out his true intentions with Samantha. I'm going to offer a warning that the audio you're about to hear in this next clip is very disturbing and graphic. Keys describes the gruesome details of what happened to Samantha in the shed that night. If you don't want to hear them, please skip ahead about 11 minutes and 30 seconds.
After all the credit or ATM stuff was done, I got a glass of wine and got her some water, and she was asking me if everything was working out okay, and if I had got a hold of her dad, and if I had the ATM card, and if she was asking me if all this stuff was going as planned, and I said, yeah, it's fine. And unscrewed the rope from the wall and cut the ties off of her hands, not the cable ties on her wrist, but the tie between them.
Mm-hmm.
And had her lay down on the floor on the mat, and took 2 more pieces of rope and put them through the cable ties. And
On her hands, so her hands.
yeah, 2 separate pieces of rope on her hands. And then I tied knots in the ends of the rope, and I screwed the rope down to the floor of the wall, so her arms were out. And
Did she ever struggle for any of this, or did she just let you do that?
she knew at that point. She said, "Please don't rape me." And I put my head right up to her ear, and I said, "You knew this was coming." And she started to nod, and she started to cry a little bit. I said, "You can make it easier, or you can make it harder." And she was still cooperative, but she was really scared at that point. And so after I had her hands screwed down, I don't remember how I tied her feet. I don't think I did much to tie her feet. I think I just took about a 6-foot piece of nylon rope and knotted it around her ankles,
Was she
and then
face
screwed
up?
it.
I'm sorry. Was she face up?
No, she's face down.
Okay. And she didn't try to kick you or anything with her feet, or anything
No.
like that? Sorry.
And then after I had her all tied down, I went up and was still awake. I went in the house. There was I didn't have her gagged any of this time. I just told her that I had my scanner on, and if any neighbors reported any screaming, I was going to be back in a second, and, she'd be sorry.
Mm-hmm.
And she never tried to scream, but I didn't have her gagged or anything at the time she was in the shed. And, but I wanted to put a gag in her mouth before I raped her. And so I went into the bedroom, and I had a silk handkerchief. It was purple.
Why did you pick that?
It was something I had left over from a girlfriend a long time ago in Seattle. We used to tie each other up with them. And, so I had that handkerchief, and I took it back into the shed and gagged her. But it wasn't like, she could still talk. It wasn't, I don't know.
When you gagged her, did you tie it around her head, or did you just stuff it in her mouth?
No, I tied it. I wound it up, and I didn't stick anything else in her mouth. I don't know. It was mostly just because I wanted to do it, because it didn't really keep her from making any noise.
Mm-hmm.
It was, I just tied it around in her mouth, and, so, I knew she was gonna scream eventually. So I took a 36-inch cable tie, and I put it around her neck, and I tightened it up. Not tight, but enough that she could feel that it was there.
Mm-hmm.
And I told her, I said, all I have to do is pull this, and once I pull it, there's no going back. If you start screaming, or if I don't like the way things are going. And she just kept nodding her head. And I took out a knife. I don't remember which knife. I think it might have been that big black folding one that I had on me when they arrested me. So maybe it wasn't that one. I had another knife that you guys aren't going to find, but
Why are we going to find
it's, I burned it in the fireplace, and it's up in Anchorage landfill somewhere. But it wasn't very big. Had about a 2 or 3 inch blade, and it was one of the freebie knives that Leatherman gives away with, like their big multi-tools. I think it was actually a knife. And it was really sharp. That's the knife I had on me most of the night, but I think for some reason I had that big black folding one, and I used that to start to cut off her clothes. I started at her shirt and cut all the way down. She had on a bra, I cut that, and then I cut the back of the arms. It was just a t-shirt, I think, gray t-shirt.
Did you have her keep the jacket on now, or was it just
She never-
over her way?
I don't think she ever had her jacket on.
I thought she put it on in the coffee shop. I thought you told her to put it on.
Maybe she did. Yeah, I guess I did tell her to put it on. I remember thinking I needed to get her tied up right away before she got any ideas. So I didn't want to give her time to put it on, but then I can remember thinking if I put the ties on her hands, she won't be able to get her jacket on. It'll just be draped over, and it's going to attract more attention when we're walking down the road. So yeah, I guess I did let her put it on. I told her to put it on, and then I put the cable ties on. But I think by the time she was in the shed, I had heaters going in there. It was hot,
Mm-hmm.
and she was cold, or she was nervous or whatever, scared, so she kept asking me to turn the temperature up. So it was hot in there. It was like 80 or 90 degrees probably.
So you don't remember having to cut through the jacket at some point?
I didn't cut the jacket off of her. I took it off of her when she was, I think when I first put her in the shed and changed the ties on her hands, I think I had her take the jacket off because I figured she'd get too hot. It was pretty warm in there. So yeah, I took the jacket off and had a big black trash bag in there already, a big contractor's bag, and I was throwing everything in there. I threw everything in that. I threw every cable tie I cut, her jacket, anything that touched her, tape, whatever, it all went in that bag, including like the wallet with the credit card. Like once I had the number scratched in the card, I didn't even look at it again. I threw everything in there. The only thing I took out of her purse was the cash. I didn't even take the change. There was a bunch of change and small stuff. I didn't take any of that stuff out. I just threw her purse in that big black bag. And the other cash, I think I might have even taken it into the house right away. I stuck it in my backpack that I was going to take on the trip. And, so anyway, she was she was on the floor, and after I cut off her shirt and her bra, then I took the knife and cut down each of her pant legs. She had on like tight black pants, like spandex, and she had on a thong. And
Did you rape her vaginally or anally?
I had some KY out there, and she felt it when I put it on her, and I think she thought I was gonna sodomize her. She started saying, "Oh no, not that," and after that I just stood up and looked at her for a while. I still had my clothes on, and just watched her for a while. And
Was she still trying to talk to
no, she wasn't saying anything. She was shaking a little bit. And then I took my clothes off and put on a condom, and I raped her. And I don't know, it was a while. Probably, I remember the radio was on. It took, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 songs. And then, right before I finished, I did sodomize her, and she screamed a little bit right then. And right when she screamed, I think I pulled on the cable tie a little bit, told her to shut up. And then after it was over, she was, I don't know, I guess you'd say she was resigned at that point. And still didn't have any clothes on. And she started asking me if I was going to kill her, and I didn't say anything. And then she started saying that she gave really good blowjobs. I don't know, I probably said something not very nice. And
What did you say?
I think I said, at this point, that sounds like a good way to get my dick bit off. And she kind of laughed a little bit. And then I put my leather gloves on.
Why did you put leather gloves on and not rubber gloves?
It's hard work to strangle somebody with a cable tie. I knew from the minute she walked out of that coffee stand, she wasn't gonna live.
Had you already decided how you were going to kill her?
No. But after I put my gloves on, I had that little knife, that little Leatherman, the one that was really sharp, had fallen out of my pocket when I was taking off my pants, and it was laying on the floor. This whole time, there wasn't any light in the shed, just my headlamp. And I saw that knife sitting there. And then after I put my gloves on, I jumped on top of her, and I grabbed the cable tie with my left hand and started pulling up as hard as I could. Tightened it all the way down. She never made a sound.
She didn't try and struggle or scream?
She never struggled. She couldn't struggle much. Her legs were screwed down, but her arms were screwed down too with the rope. So I was straddling her, and I had so much force on the cable tie that her whole, like half of her body was lifted up off the floor. And so yeah, even if she had been struggling, I wouldn't have been able to tell.
How long did it take her to die?
It was taking, I mean, it's hard to tell, but it was taking a while. And I remember thinking, I still have to shower, but I was still, it's gonna sound weird, but I was still really into her. And so, anyway, I'm not gonna tell all that part, but I stabbed her once, right below her right shoulder blade, in her back.
With the blood in it?
With that little knife.
Yeah.
It wasn't very deep coming to that, but anyway, I didn't really stab her to make her die faster or anything. It was something else. But
Did you stab her because you were so attracted to her?
No, I'm not going to go into that. I took a piece of rope that was laying there. And at this point, it was probably a couple minutes. And I could tell she still wasn't, there was still life there. And tied it in a square knot to the cable tie. And I took the rope and I hung her off that shelf support. Tied like a half hitch. Had it so her head was, and the front of her body was still lifted off the ground so that there was a lot of pressure on it. And then I finished my wine and put my pants on and went back to the house and took a shower.
After Keyes brutally rapes and kills Samantha, he finishes his wine and returns to the house to shower, finish packing his bags, and get ready for the trip he has planned with Kimberly and his daughter. Before Keyes leaves town, he returns to the shed to clean things up. He wraps Samantha's body in the tarp from the floor of the shed and opens the cabinet doors, where he places her body inside. Keyes then calls a cab and prepares to leave town, knowing that the frigid Alaska temperatures would preserve Samantha's body while he was on vacation. Keyes callously jokes with investigators that his biggest concern was that someone might break into the shed while he was gone and try to steal his tools, only to discover Samantha instead.
Before you talk about what you did, what was your plan? You're getting on a plane and your body was in the shed.
I was thinking it was 20 degrees outside and I didn't have anything to worry about.
But you left the heaters on in the shed.
No.
Oh, okay. You did. All right.
I unplugged. I left them on when I went in to take a shower, but then
I
that
see.
was the last thing I did. I unplugged the extension cord, and it had been on for a while. I remember the extension cord overheated and melted through the ice on the driveway, and it left a line all the way up to the shed. And I rolled it back up and kicked some snow over it. I don't know why. But then the next day after I got to Houston, I remember I called and told her very specifically. I was like, there's somebody's been hanging around the house. I think they're going to try and steal my tools. I want you, when you fly down, to park your car right in front of that shed and pull up so the bumper's almost touching the shed so that no one can break into it. And, yeah, because I don't know. Because it's entirely feasible that someone might have broken into that shed when we were gone, steal my tools and find that instead.
Would have gotten more than they bargained for.
Yeah, that would have been a lot of explaining to do when I get back to Anchorage.
Were you worried about getting caught? Why not?
I mean, there's nothing for me to worry about, really. It did occur to me that when I was doing all this, that was why before I did any of this, I kept saying to myself, if there's not another car, you're not doing this. You're not going to do this. If there's not another car, you're not doing this. You want to do this and there's not another car, you have to go somewhere else and do it. And jack a car or something, because I knew that even with the racks off my truck, all it would take is maybe a couple numbers on the license plate or somebody recognizing me in the truck. So I knew I was taking a risk, but I still wasn't worried about it after it was all done, partly because it's Anchorage, maybe, I don't know.
What about Anchorage?
I'd been listening to the police scanner a lot recently and just kind of felt like by the time anybody figured out what had actually happened, the trail would already be cold. And even if they had pictures of my truck, they wouldn't know whose truck it was. They wouldn't have tire tracks. They wouldn't have forensic evidence. They wouldn't have shoe prints. They certainly wouldn't have fingerprints or DNA or anything. So I didn't worry about it. Like I say, I knew there were a lot of those trucks in Anchorage, so.
While out of town, Keyes had taken a cruise and visited his family in Texas. Keyes' behavior while on this trip was suspicious, to say the least. While at his mom's house in Texas, Keyes leaves in the early morning hours and his whereabouts are unknown for over 2 days. And he actually misses his flight back to Anchorage. He attempts to send messages to his mom and sisters indicating that he's stuck somewhere in the mud. And when he finally does return, his rental car is covered in mud and he says he hasn't slept in over 2 days. Bear with me a moment while I take you on a short detour because I'll be covering this trip in more detail later. But knowing what we know up to this point, I have to circle back to my earlier comments in part 1 about the ransom note. To refresh your memory, the ransom note said, quote, "I may not use the card much in AK due to small pop, but as I will be leaving soon, I will be using it all over. She did almost get away twice, once on Tudor and once in the desert. Must be losing my touch," end quote. We know Samantha tried to get away on Tudor Road, and we know she never left Alaska. So did someone try to get away in the desert? Keyes explains this away to investigators as part of his plan to throw them off, but I just can't shake the thought that Samantha may not have been Keyes' last victim.
I opened that pack of computer paper I got and put it in the typewriter, and the thing worked fine, and typed up one draft of the ransom note, stuck it in the printer feed tray, hit copy with the picture in there. As soon as I had done that, I pulled I had gloves on the whole time. I had latex gloves on the whole time I was typing it, and, I never touched the paper or anything.
So you purposely misspelled some stuff in the ransom note.
I didn't. No, I was just I wasn't really that concerned about the wording of it. I had an idea of, the message I wanted to get across, but
What was with the desert? You said she escaped on Tudor, and that was true. Almost escaped on Tudor. That was true, right? And then you said, and once in the desert.
That was a calculation that I had in my head from the time the picture was taken to the time the ransom note was given was about 10 days. And I guess I was thinking, make it sound as if she had been sold as a sex slave, maybe somewhere in Mexico. It's about how long it would take to drive there from the 13th and get back to Anchorage if you were driving.
Keyes gets back to Anchorage the morning of February 18th, and within a couple of days, Keyes goes back out to the shed to check on Samantha's body and realizes that since her body had been frozen, he wasn't able to get her out of the cabinets. Keyes decided to disassemble the cabinets around her and began the process of thawing out her body with heaters. Keyes again gives graphic details of what he does with Samantha's body once he removes her from the cabinet. And again, a warning, this is graphic.
I couldn't get the body out of the cabinet, at least not easily, because it was frozen. And the doors only opened about 3.5, 4 feet. And so I decided, I had been planning on doing it anyway, because I was planning to sell that shed this spring. I started taking apart the cabinets and took out all the lights and air conditioner. That air conditioner that was in the garage was in there, and pretty much everything in the cabinets I threw away. Like all the insulation, the lights, all that stuff went in that load to the landfill. And so I just dismantled the whole thing around her, basically. She was there on the lower level. Took it all apart and cut it up into firewood and saved some of the hardware that I think I saved, but everything else I cut up into firewood. And then, that would have been Monday. Yeah, so I took it all apart on Monday. And then Monday night, I rolled her out of there in the tarp, and she had bled quite a bit from that one stab wound in her back, and so the tarp had actually leaked through into the insulation on the floor of that grow cabinet, and so it took me a while to get all that torn out. I took out the drainage pipes and took out the insulation on the floor and everything else I could see that had blood on it, and all that stuff went to the fireplace. And then I started bagging everything up. I got a bunch of, I think I did a big double bag, those big contractor bags. I took the sleeping bag she was on, cut it up into about 4 or 5 pieces. It was pretty much soaked with blood, and put that in the bag. Put the tarp in the bag. I cut it up in 4 or 5 pieces, and all of her clothes. When I raped her, I had the clothes kind of like wadded up underneath her pelvis. And so they were still there, and so yeah, I cleaned up everything I could and put it in that bag. And a little bit of blood got on the floor of the shed. I don't know how, but I'm pretty paranoid about that. And so I ruled her. Huh?
I'm sorry. Did you try to clean that up? Blow out the
Not right away. I think I wiped it up with paper towels and threw the paper towels in that garbage bag just so I wouldn't track it everywhere. And then I rolled her onto something else. I think it was a piece of visqueen, like that clear plastic. And to get her off the tarp, and the foam mat she was on, I cut that up and put it all in that bag. Started a big fire upstairs, waited till it was about, 1 or 2 a.m. and started burning everything, like plastic, tarp, everything that she had touched. Took her purse out, started going through all that. Almost everything got burned. I kept her makeup, and I kept the cell phone and the credit card. And there was a bunch of change in the bottom of the purse, like quarters or stuff from the coffee stand. I think I just grabbed that, threw it in with all my other change, mixed it in.
So it wasn't blown out of that.
Yeah, I don't know why I was thinking, like I say, I was probably overly paranoid, but I think, technically there's some of it DNA on that.
Did you braid her hair?
Not right away.
What happened to that?
Well, this is where you get the abridged version. Let's just say I thawed her out and had a table made in the shed at that point. Before I built the table, I had taken a really big piece of plastic, probably like 15 by 20, and had it stapled all the way up the walls and all the way across the floor. Before I did that, she was out of the shed at that time. I had everything cleared out of it. I had a big bucket of hot water with a lot of bleach in it, and I had a grout sponge. And I cleaned up, like wiped everything down, like especially around where there had been blood on the floor. And then after I did that, I put the visqueen up, or plastic up the walls, stapled it up, and then I built the table. And then I brought her back in.
From where?
And tied ropes to her arms at that point, and did the same thing pretty much. Had some screws, tied knots in the rope, screwed to the wall, so her arms were up above her head, like in the picture.
After you got her out, was she not rigid?
Nope. Well, she was very floppy. Well, I wouldn't tell you this part except you're gonna find out anyway, so.
Why wouldn't you tell us?
I told you this stuff is private, there's too many people in here. But, I had sex with her corpse. And, she was warm. And, by then it was getting late in the morning. I remember I guess I lost track of time. Came out and knocked on the door of the shed. And I said, yeah, go back inside, eat your breakfast. And, cause she was, at that point, anytime I opened the door, she was like right there.
Mm-hmm.
So anytime I came in and out of the shed, I would like kind of slip out without opening the door very much. And so yeah, I just left her there after that.
After defiling Samantha's body, Keyes wanted to continue with his ransom plan. He had been following the story in the news and saw that there was a significant amount of reward money raised for Samantha. But he knew that in order to carry out the ransom, he needed supplies like a typewriter, a Polaroid camera, film, and a few other items. So he ran around town getting what he needed.
After that, that would have been what did we say, the 19th? Monday was the 19th, so that would have made it the 20th. Tuesday, that would have been the 20th. Oh, so Tuesday would have been the 21st. It was getting back the next day, so I remember thinking I had a lot to do. Hadn't really figured out how I was going to pull it off. So that next night, Tuesday night, most of Tuesday, I was out trying to get the stuff together that I was going to need. I was looking for newspapers. I was looking for a Polaroid camera, which is incredibly hard to find nowadays. And bought some paper, computer paper. Went to a bunch of thrift stores. I was looking for a typewriter. Don't remember exactly how much of that. I think maybe that first day, Tuesday, I had found the typewriter. I had the paper. I couldn't find Polaroid cameras anywhere. I finally did a search online and found them at Target, but by then I was already out of school, so I ran down to Target with her and just ran in the store and grabbed that, and they didn't have any film for the Polaroid camera I got there, so I went back to the house and went online, and supposedly they had it up in Wasilla. And by this time, I was realizing that I wasn't going to get everything done by the time I got back. And so I was just trying to get everything together.
Did you go to Wasilla and get the film?
I went that night.
Yeah, the 21st? The night before?
Yep. Yeah, I waited till the sleep. Made sure she had her cell phone there by her bed, and I took off. Went up to Wasilla Target in Wasilla. Went into their parking lot. There was nobody there. I thought they were closed, but they were open. And I went in and got a pack of the film. And went out and got into the car and decided since I was up there, I was going to go look for the lake.
After Keyes had all of the supplies he needed to carry out his plan, he got to work on the ransom note and tried to make Samantha appear to be still alive for the proof of life photo.
I went into Walmart at some point and bought a bunch more makeup similar to the colors that she had in her purse, and got some fishing line, bought some needles at Walmart.
Newspaper?
The newspaper I ended up finding in the dumpster behind cars. They have a big recycling dumpster, and I found a whole stack of papers, like chronological order, from about the 6th to the whenever I got back, 19th or 20th or something.
Why did you pick 13?
Because I wasn't in Anchorage on the 13th. And yeah, so once I had all that stuff, I really can't remember. It seems like it was gone. Maybe she was out of town with friends or something. But I know it took me all night to do it. All night to get the makeup done. And she was still on the table, but obviously she didn't look as good as when I first thought her out. So yeah, I had a lot of work to do, and probably, I don't know, 2-3 hours I worked on her, doing the makeup and trying to figure out how I was going to position things, trying to make it look like she was still alive. And biggest problem I had was with her face. I could get the makeup to work, but her face was slack, so by then it was already getting to be morning, seems like. So that's when I kind of gave up on like the mouth and stuff. I just decided to tape it. I taped it so that it looked like her face had some texture to it, I guess. And then I was still having problems with her eyes or her forehead, because there was no expression. And tried super glue, that didn't work. And so I took the needles that I had a big curved needle, I forget what they call it. But and then I had that 10-pound test fishing line, and I took the needle and went down through her brow, like right between her eyebrows, down up along her nose cartilage under the skin, and came out, and then went back up and along the same path and did it again, and then pulled it tight to make it look like she was squeezing her eyes shut. And then I took a test picture just to kind of see what it was going to look like. Okay, put a little more makeup on after that. I already had her hair braided at that point. The makeup I used, like what was left over. Everywhere. I had to put foundation, like every part you see in that picture has foundation on it. 2 or 3 different kinds. Well, she didn't look good. I mean, her skin, you could start to see the blood under the skin, and some bruising. And I mean, she was still in good shape, but she definitely didn't look alive. And so yeah, it took me a long time. I think I used 2 or 3 tubes of foundation, and then after that I had to go over it with a couple other colors in different areas, because I mean, at first it just looked like she was painted. I had to add in some red and I don't know, different stuff, different places. It was a while. It was like, I don't know, between 3 and 5 hours. And then had like the face makeup, that took a while too. And then it took me about, it was hard to take the picture because the Polaroid I had only gives a printout of about 2 by 2.5 inches or something. And so I think I took about 5 or 6 pictures before I finally had one that only showed what I wanted.
Did you cut the corner off?
Yeah. Well, I cut the edges off the whole photograph. At first I was thinking give them the Polaroid and have the notes separate. And then I decided that it would be harder for you to figure out if I scanned the picture with a printer, not through the computer, but just with the scanner onto the paper. That way you probably wouldn't know for sure that it was a Polaroid. And so yeah, that's what I did. And then after I remember when I decided to do it that way, I was thinking, well, hell, if I was going to do this, I could have easier ways I could have done it rather than running all over town looking for a Polaroid. But yeah, so I just decided to do it that way.
Did you cut the corner off because it showed the mark?
Well, it wasn't so much the brand that was showing, but I have some moles on my arm, and I was, I looked at it pretty carefully, and I guess I was just thinking that it might show something. I was thinking to keep the minimum amount of my arm in there and still get the message across. Yeah, so then once I had all the pictures, I saved out the best one, and then everything except for her went into another garbage bag. There was a lot of other stuff out there. There was like a pillow that I had under her at first. And all that stuff I put in the garbage bag, and I remember I was home for sure at that point because I waited until it was really late one night and then burned all that stuff, like all the makeup. And I didn't use some of the makeup, but that's all gone. Like it was in this old case she had out in the garage, and she never uses it, so I knew she wouldn't miss it, so I just used it. And then once I was done with it, I threw it all away. Like everything that was in that shed, except for her and the table, and she was still on the table. She was still tied to the wall, but everything else that was out there went into that bag and got burned. And then, yeah,
Why did you bring it?
make it more believable, I guess. Well, no, there was more to it, but yeah, that was the main thing. Well, put it this way. I mean, it's obvious why I did it. I did it. The bottom line was to get money out of it, but at the same time, not like I didn't want to do it.
Why $30,000?
I was following the story when I was in New Orleans on either my computer or the hotel computer, I don't remember. And I was amazed at how much money suddenly became involved. But the plan had always been, it was always the plan. That's why I had the debit card, that's why I got the number, that's why I had her phone. That's why that's the only things I kept.
Did you need money at this time for some reason?
No, if I was out, I'd have to work right now.
So why?
Because I was bored with my work.
Keys gets up early on the morning of February 24th and drives out to Connors Park. He pinned the ransom note to a board located under a picture of a missing golden doodle named Albert. That evening, Keys volunteered to be the designated driver for his girlfriend and her friends, which gave him an opportunity to be on the other side of town so he could send the text to Dwayne indicating where to find the ransom note.
So the whole time I was dropping him off, I was trying to think of a good place to send the text from. And so I dropped him off at his friend's house and went back out to the car's parking lot, to one of the back corners, and turned her phone on and sent the text. Looked at a few of the messages, sent the text, and then took the phone battery out right away and headed home.
Why did she send the text to her boyfriend's number? Why not her father's number, since her father was the one that kind of hyperfilled?
I didn't think that part through very well because after first time I checked the account, I was thinking that they probably never even got the text. I was thinking it was probably intercepted by the police because the police probably had that phone. And that's not what I wanted. I wanted everybody who knew her to know about the ransom demand. I didn't want it to be in the police's hands. So, yeah, I was originally thinking when I sent the text, I was going to send a group text to every one of her contacts, the same message. But, I don't know, there were a lot of people out and around the car when I was texting, and I was paranoid, didn't want to be there for too long, so I just sent it to that one number and figured I'd wait and see what happened. So I turned it off and headed home, and I was home for what I was doing. I was home for a while, and got curious, and decided to go out for a little drive and see what was happening. And so I headed down Wisconsin Street to Spenard, and drove out to Spenard, and drove past Connors Park, and I knew right away that I wasn't sure at that point that the police had intercepted the message, but I had an idea just because of, it looked super hush-hush. There was like a big crime scene van there, and there was a couple patrol cars, but there were no lights, and there was no, I knew right away that the message had got through. I didn't slow down or stop or anything. I just kept driving down whatever road that is. I guess it turns to Jewel Lake or whatever.
After Keys returns home, he begins the process of disposing of Samantha's body. He dismembered her body and placed each part of her in heavy-duty trash bags. He decided to dispose of her body in a frozen lake called Lake Matanuska. It took him 3 trips over the course of 3 days to pick out the location, make the hole in the ice, and bring out all of the pieces of her body. Keys built an ice hut where he was able to provide cover for himself and do some fishing while he was on the ice.
And Matt needs to like. So what are they going to find when they go out there?
Ice fishing spot.
Okay.
It's about 40 feet deep.
Was it a hole that you cut, or was the hole there?
No, it was a hole I cut.
Okay. What did you use to cut it?
Chainsaw.
Okay. When did you go out there?
20 February 20, maybe the 20th, 21st, and 22nd. I was out there, somewhere in there.
Okay.
3 days, or I think it was 3 days in a row, yeah.
Was anyone out there with you?
No. First day there was a guy out there fishing.
How long did you stay out there?
First day?
Yeah.
Not long. Maybe an hour.
And what'd you do during that hour?
Cut a hole and had the part pieces of my ice fishing shack, which, I mean, that's, I don't know if you guys probably have that stuff.
Okay, that's the shack from your shed. I mean, the ice fishing shack that was in your shed.
Yeah.
So you set that up?
You probably don't have all the pieces to it, but there were some pieces that I had behind the shed too.
Okay. I don't know what they took out of your shed, Israel, so that's why I'm gonna ask about it, because I haven't seen everything they took out of your shed just yet. So,
did they take everything out of it?
I don't know that they took everything out of it. But why don't you tell me what they should be looking for in the shed?
There's a sled and a big tote. I think it's I don't know, like a 30 or 40 gallon tote in the sled. Had all my fishing equipment in it, and I don't know. I didn't clean it up real well, so I mean that's why I figured once you got the search warrant on my house, you're probably gonna find something on it.
I understand. I need to hear it from you. You can understand that.
Yeah. So first day I was out there, maybe had my sled, chainsaw with me, had about probably about 80 pounds of lead weights, and cleared off a area in the ice, probably about 8 by 8 feet, and cut a hole, and had a piece of plywood, and like the wooden parts of my shack, and all that stuff I left out there that day. Some pieces, it was like the pieces of wood, they were especially made for that shack I designed. It was basically just a tarp, but it also had like some tent poles were part of it, and then the rest were some wood pieces that I fabricated. And the lead weights I buried under the snow out there, and there was a guy fishing right there on that point. So I didn't do much out there that day. That was pretty much it. Cut the hole, covered it with plywood and the other pieces of wood, and then buried it in snow to keep it from freezing over again.
Did you have her with you that day?
No. And may have been like a day, or I think it was 3 days in a row, but I don't know. Can't be sure. Anyway, that's where she is.
Okay. You said so that was the first day. You came back, you think once or twice more?
Twice more.
Twice more? What happened on the second time?
Man, there's a lot of stuff to move. I had my truck. You can't park down by the lake. There's a parking lot up by the highway, up by the Glen Highway, and I had that's where I would park my truck there. And I couldn't pull down more than about, I don't know, maybe 150 pounds at a time in the sled. So that's why I had to make 3 trips. And you're going to need 5 different bags.
Great. Can you tell us what you pulled down in each one of those trips?
First day was the head, legs, and the arms.
Oh, Samantha Koenig?
Yep.
And the second day?
The torso.
And what should they look for specifically?
Oh, well, they'll see it. She's not wrapped up or anything.
Okay.
Just baling wire. Baling wire, bundled it up, had it all triple bagged in the tote. And I don't know, I mean, it was... Yeah, you're going to find stuff on the ice. It was pretty neat, but there'll still be some blood on the ice. And, yeah, like I say, the weights are big fishing weights. Or not fishing, net, or like net fishing. And they're lead that's on a cable. And the cable, I cut them into sections. There should be, I ranging from 2 to 5 weights, depending on the size of each package that I dumped through the hole.
Okay, so we're looking for plastic bags with a netting around them? Or
No.
No bags?
Nothing. They were in bags when I took it out.
And then you tied weights?
They already had wire. They were already wired up. They were all ready to go. So I went out the second day, set up the ice fishing shack, and put the bags. I just had it all in one bag each time. And I had the bag in the ice fishing shack because there's people up on the side and stuff. So I, cut the bags open, and probably only took me 5 or 10 minutes to drop everything through that first day, and rolled all the bags up, and then double bagged them again to keep it from getting on the inside of the tote. And then I fished. Fished out there for, 4 or 5 hours that day. Caught a couple fish, and we went home, and then the next day went out again, and with the torso, and that only took me, 2 or 3 minutes. Get rid of that. Fished again for 3 or 5 hours, something like that, and took it all down. Filled the hole back up with ice, threw some snow around to, like I say, you'll see it. You'll see where the hole was, probably. I don't imagine there's not very much snow up there. So.
Okay. Are they going to find anything else out there? You said there might be some stuff on the ice.
Oh, you'll find her DNA. You'll find my DNA on her. She hasn't been there very long, so.
Investigators set up a dive team, and on April 2nd, they located Samantha's remains in Lake Matanuska at the precise location identified by Keys. Keeping true to their word, a secure perimeter was established, and SWAT personnel identified and thwarted media and public efforts to breach the perimeter. An autopsy was performed where additional evidence was collected from her body to continue to build their case against Keys and corroborate his confession. Samantha was cremated on Easter Sunday, April 8th, 2012. Her obituary said that she loved animals, her friends, fishing with her papa, playing music, and Call of Duty with Dwayne. Samantha had an infectious charm and a brilliant, sarcastic wit. Her favorite color was lime green, and on April 22nd, 2012, a celebration of life was held at West High School where friends, family, and hundreds of people from the grief-stricken community gathered and wore green to honor Samantha's life. James Koenig wore a leather vest with lime green angel wings sewn on the back. A youth choir sang as lime green balloons were released into the sky. A Facebook page was created in Samantha's honor and is appropriately titled Seeking Alaska's Missing, or SAM for Sam. James Koenig is a frequent poster on the page, and it brings awareness to the community when someone goes missing. Most recently, a family friend of the Koenigs, along with her sister, started an initiative to help improve workplace safety in Samantha's honor. The Samantha Koenig Safety Act is working to raise awareness for night shift worker safety in Alaska. The goal of the initiative is to help prevent tragedies like Samantha's from happening by raising awareness and influencing the creation of legislation that will help give businesses incentives to provide a safer work environment to employees working the night shift. That includes better lighting, security systems, and emergency preparedness. There is a Facebook page called Samantha's Shield where you can help support their cause. I have added this to the show notes for you too. The true crime genre has no shortage of material. We are captivated by the stories of the victims and in some ways can relate to the emotions behind the crimes themselves. As human beings, we've all experienced feelings of jealousy, anger, and greed. Our fascination with these stories stems from a desire to understand why someone would cross that line and commit the ultimate sin. But in the case of a serial killer, our audience is captivated by their desire to understand and will always be left scratching their heads because when someone kills just for the thrill of it, there's no relatable emotion tied to the act. It's the opposite of jealousy, greed, or vengeance. The end game is the kill. In our search for understanding, the serial killer breaks traditional boundaries and makes it impossible to relate to. So while I wouldn't normally devote an entire episode to the person committing the murder, In this case, Israel Keyes is a serial killer, and I think it's important to tell the entire story, even his. So who was Israel Keyes? What did the people who knew him best have to say about him? And what can we learn about his past that might help us understand why he became the monster he was? In part 3, we take a trip down memory lane with a notorious serial killer, as Israel Keyes tells investigators about his past, and we learn what the people closest to Keyes had to say about him. We will also take a closer look at the characteristics of Keyes' MO and learn some of the ways he was able to avoid detection for so many years. Join me next week on Buried Evidence, and if you have enjoyed the show, please share it with someone you know, and don't forget to leave a rating and a review. Thank you for listening.